Hello everyone and welcome back to Wargame Red Dragon. We're moving on now finally from the infantry tab over to support for the Entente coalition, and we're taking a look at howitzers. So those are going to be the Pavonka, the Ondava, and the Nora B. And I really have only used the Ondava, but I've never really found it to be that satisfying, and at 120 points, it's sort of a toss-up, I guess, just looking at the unit card naively between the Ondava and the Nora B. And of course, if you want that 10 HE slower rate of fire gun, the Pavonka is a pretty unique choice. We have Gatsu here with us today to tell us about the differences between these units, which one you should take, and why.
So let's start off with Ondava. It's like pretty standard round of mill howitzer for like 120 points. It's like on the top end, but it's not particularly good because it's got a long shot reload of 8.5 seconds, but it's got like the salvo of 10. So if you're trying to snipe a FOP or something, it's okay at that. But having like actual power on the ground, it's not compared to Nora. Nora B is like not so common, but it's actually a Caesar clone almost. It's got same salvo length and shot reload time, but
Gotcha.
it also has like a much higher ammo count. So you can kind of like use it even without FOP to certain like sense.
Yeah,
So
so
it's
you
not
fire
bad.
and move, fire and move, fire and move, bring some resupply vehicles, like resupply jeeps over to it, kind of deal.
Yes, also because it has like the lower shot reload, it's still very usable as a fire support. I would prefer it much more than Ondava.
Yeah, so I guess the issue, just to nail in on that a little bit, with the high shot reload time, if I'm trying to use this to support, say, an infantry fight because of the relatively fast aim time, there's going to be such a big gap between when every shell lands that my opponent's going to move out of the way, it's not really going to deal all that much damage, and that's just going to be really cumbersome. Bit of an odd question. Do you ever find that the direct fire heat gun is relevant, or at that point is it everything's already gone to hell in a handbasket?
I have seen on some units for it to work in like a late game 1v1 where it actually like killed some of my units, but usually it's doing nothing most of the time.
Gotcha. So a last question about these two, the armor. So of course, these are both wheeled, relatively same speed, relatively same autonomy, but the Ondava is armored, two front, one side, one back, one top, while the Nora B is not, and that will impact the amount of damage that they take when receiving fire. Is that enough to weight the decision between the two of them, or does the shot characteristic matter a bit more?
It's up to everyone's personal preference because, of course, Ondava is much more survivable than Nora, but the Nora will give you more boom for the buck than Ondava. That's
Which is
like
pretty
the
valuable,
trade-off.
I guess. Now let's just, I guess, take a look at the Pavonka as well. It seems like the Nora B is winning the initial comparison. How does that compare to the 10 HE power sort of siege gun type artillery piece?
A siege gun artillery is very strong, but the problem with the Pivonka is that because of the Eugene's reasoning, it costs much more than M110, which does the same job with the same dispersion, costs 30 points more, but it has a bigger salvo of 4 compared to 2. So you get the trade-off. It's not bad at all, but it's also not that good as you would get in Blue for decks with M110s, or you actually don't have access to better artillery like Malka, which has the lower dispersion, so it can be like this sort of like sniper role. But if you like Pivonkas, if you like the siege artillery, it's definitely a good piece. There is nothing wrong with it. But actually, when it comes to howitzers in Entente, the most notable right now is surprisingly the Prist.
So that's the 45 points. Oh, really? Are you serious?
Yes, it's out of all these pieces, the Priest is the best artillery piece in there.
So just looking at this 5 HE power, I wouldn't expect that to have the same killing power as something with 7 or 10 HE, and the range versus ground is not very high.
Of course, it's a little bit different, but you would usually compare the Priest to like a mortar, right? If you could.
Yeah, so let's get a mortar up here, and I'm really curious about this, especially because the Prom S has such a good reputation generally. Oh, that's the wrong one. Pinned. Let's get the priest. There it is.
Promise is one of the best mortars in the game, but they serve a little bit a different role, which is quite surprising because if you just look in the armory like this, you wouldn't see a point in taking the priest, right? Like you get a lower dispersion, you get like maybe higher range, but the rate of fire is much lower. But in the end, it's very misleading because the biggest difference between them is actually the fact that the mortar has very fast aim time of like 8 seconds compared to Priest, which has 20 seconds. But the difference is that the Pram has a salvo length of 3 and the Priest has salvo length of 10, even though the shot reload is doubled for like 8 seconds compared to 4. But that means you are able to consistently fire at one position. But the biggest actual difference is with its firepower. Like you would think to yourself that 5 HE and 5 HE is the same, but it's actually very different because you get a splash radius of 60 on the basic mortar and
Okay.
105 on the priest.
Oh,
so
wow.
the priest will hit more consistently the units. Also, the suppression will be about the same of still in favor of priest, of course, of 210 and 180 on the mortar.
So those are different from what's on the unit card. Just so you guys are aware, there is an armory tool as well that has been, I guess, a feature in the community for a long time just because of all these hidden stats. So the difference that Gatsu is talking about with the HE power is not something you can see on the unit card, but it is definitely a characteristic of the unit itself, and there is a way to find that out through the armory tool. So I guess, let's say now that we have all this information, that we're building out our tab, we have 3 units of anti-air, we take the Promise as a mortar, and we have 1 more slot. What do you put in that slot in a general deck, and up or down vet it?
So in general deck, if I were to choose between howitzers, it's all depending if I have FOB or not. If I don't have a FOB, I will just take the Priest, because it has like 70 ammo, so it has like 7 salvos, it takes a long time, and you have a lot of them. You have like a upvet 6, so if you call in like 3 of them and they start running out, you don't call a Logi, you just call another one and regroup them and share the ammo. So that's how you replenish them.
Gotcha. And if you do run a FOB?
If I had to run a FOB, it's either like Pivonka for a big team game, or if it's like lower intensity game, I would usually just take the Nora.
Fair enough. Well, that is a lot of information about Entente artillery. I absolutely love it. I hope you guys did as well, and we'll see you with another unit comparison here tomorrow.